one of the most fascinating and crucial scientific theories of physiology is digestion. Now, digestion is so important as a physiological process because it enables for food that we ingest to essentially be dispersed throughout the body and supply nutrients to allow our body to function. Now, digestion is a bit of a complicated process, but I think that we can shorten it down to a few specific stages to explain how it operates. Basically, when we first take a bite of food, the salivary glands in our mouths begin to break down some of the basic componential sugars in that food. Basically, saliva, which is at a basic pH of about 7, contains enzymes called amylase, and that amylase breaks down the starch in our food to some more basic sugars or disaccharides called maltose and amylose. Basically, following this, the food becomes known as bolus, as it is basically beginning to break down, and then goes down our digestive pipe or our esophagus. In the esophagus, basically the muscles begin to slosh the bolus around and further break it down to where it is more digestible once it heads towards its next location, which is the stomach. In the stomach, it has a very acidic pH of about 3, and from there are special enzymes called trypsin and others which break down the proteins or the essential structure of the food into more basic polypeptide chains, or the basic construction of a protein, which is made up of amino acids, or the essential monomer or central component of protein. From there, the stomach sends the remaining bolus, or the remaining broken down food, to the digestive tract, where it goes to one of the most crucial parts of digestion, which is to the duodenum, or more commonly referred to as the small intestine. In the small intestine, the remaining maltose and amylose sugars are broken down to glucose and more basic sugars, or monosaccharides. What also begins to happen is that the proteins with other trypsin enzymes are fully broken down to amino acids, and perhaps most importantly, lipids, or the components of fats, are broken down and processed. What happens is that these lipids, which are the main components of fats in our food, are essentially processed and fully dismantled through lipase, or the fat enzyme, and ultimately they are emulsified or further absorbed and broken down by the body through bile, which is a chemical fluid produced by our gallbladder and a little bit by our lipid. After this, the small intestine transports the remaining food to a smaller component, which is known as the ileum. And in the ileum, all of the nutrients that is within this broken down piece of food are basically supplied to the bloodstream through our villi, or tiny little components of our digestive tract that basically transport nutrients throughout the body. Once all this is done, the remaining waste of the food is or whatever cannot be dispersed as nutrients is then transported to the large intestine. And in the large intestine, any fluid or water or components that cannot be expelled are absorbed out, and the remaining waste is sent towards the rectum for excretion. Overall, digestion is an extremely complex and fascinating physiological process that allows for our body to absorb the nutrients it needs to survive, as well as to process the food we eat.